Alright, next we'll talk about how to bring the experiment all together. We'll do this by incorporating all of our functions that we created into the main function, and use the main function to determine the control of the experiment. As a recap, let's go through all of our various routines. We want to initialize once at the very beginning, and then we want to check the systems to make sure everything was okay. And after that, we want to run the light cycle, the watering the plant cycle, and also storing values periodically. So for the watering the plant, we wanted this to, I guess in essence, occur continually, where we're constantly monitoring whether the plant has enough water. For the light cycle, we want it to change every 12 hours. For storing data, we want this to occur at 4-hour increments. And the same can be said for taking a picture. So, as we go back to our main file, first thing we want to do is initialize the system. So we'll do a call to our init function that we created earlier. Next thing what we want to do is start our, main while loop, which will determine the program flow. Since we never want this one to stop, we're going to make a while true, or while one. We said that we want to continually monitor the water levels to make sure they were good. So every time through the loop, we're going to check the water. And it's actually called water plant. There we go. Okay. And so we want to say that every 12 hours we want it to toggle the LED color. And so to do that, we're going to need to get the time variable. So let's declare a date and time variable at the beginning. And every time through the loop, we're going to read the time. There you go. So, we said if the time is before 12 p.m., then we want it to be red. And if it's after 12 p.m., we want it to be blue. So using if statement, if we want it to be red, and then otherwise we want it to be blue. Alright, to do this, you might remember that whenever we were doing the light cycle, we actually checked the time to determine which should take place. So what we could do there instead is actually make a call to light cycle, or we can modify light cycle to accept a new parameter, which we'll call color. Actually, since we only have two colors, let's make it a Boolean, which has true/false values. There you go. And we're going to say, make it red on. So if you pass it a true value, it'll turn on the red. If you pass it a false value, it'll turn on blue. So we won't be looking at the time anymore. We'll be looking at the red on value. So if red on is true, then we'll turn on the red lights. Otherwise, we'll turn on the blue lights. Okay. So now what we can do is we can make a call to light cycle. And we'll tell it the first time, whenever it is less than 12, we want the red to be on. So we'll turn it, make it true. And then whenever we're after 12, then we'll turn on blue. And we'll do that by passing it false. Like that. Okay. Then lastly, every 4 hours, we'll want to take a picture and log data. So I'm going to do here, if the time temp dot hour, and what we want to know is if it's equally divisible by 4. What we can do, we can divide it by 4 and get the remainder somehow. The operation we use for that is called the modulus. And that'll basically tell us the remainder after dividing by 4. And if it, basically every 4 hours, if we want it to happen at 0, 4, 8, and so on, the remainder should be 0. Like that. So we calculate the modulus, and if it's equally divisible by 4, then we're going to take the picture and log data, which is store values, and take picture. Paste that there. So we want to store value. Like that. Okay. The last thing we want to do is, before we start all this, we want to configure the date and time. To do that, we're going to use the datetime.set. So date time set, and what we do, we pass it a date and time variable. In this case, we'll use time temp. Right now, date and time has not been initialized to anything, so we need to configure it. So we start by saying time temp. Let's initialize time temp to today's date and also today's time. As an added note, the date and time uses military time. So if it was 1 o'clock, I guess PM, the hour would be 13. But right now it is 11:32 where I am, so the time temp dot hour equals 11. Then the minute is equal to 33. Oops. 25 seconds. Let's add a comment for that. Okay. Let's do the same for the date. So, time temp. And for the month, this is November. So, November. And then the day is 27th. And the year is 2013. Like that. And so now, whenever we pass the time temp, it'll configure the microcontroller to start its time at 11:33 and 25 seconds on November 27, 2013. There you go. And that's basically how to bring it all together.